Hello, welcome back to the channel, and today we are going to be discussing the immortal question, E or E7? Now there's a bit of controversy about this online and in ukulele circles, so I just thought I'd chip in with some hopefully very quick and handy advice on whether it's okay to play an E7 if you're struggling with that pesky E chord. Now we all know that the E chord is quite tricky to get to. There's lots of different versions of the E chord, but they're all a little bit fiddly, and so a lot of people will default to playing an E7, and a lot of the time you can get away with it, but sometimes you can't. So let's unravel that today. The first thing I would say is that actually you do kind of want to be learning as many chords as possible, and if you do want to keep pushing yourself, then I have a video up here that will give you some approachable ways of learning the E chord. So do definitely go and check that out if you're struggling with the E chord, because it is important to at least give these chords a try. But like I said, some people default to an E7 and they are quite similar. In fact, a lot of normal chords and their seventh counterparts are very similar. The closest I can think of is G and G7. They do sound similar, and yet they are different. And so let's dive into what actually is a seventh chord and when is it okay to do that and when not. Well, I'll spare you a technical explanation. All you need to know right now is that a seventh chord is played during moments of tension, and therefore the chord that isn't a seventh, it's just a normal E chord, that is played during a moment of stability. That is to say, you can think of a song as having like a story, almost like a film or a book. The plot line and the level of sort of intensity and tension will sort of peak and trough throughout a song. And a lot of storytelling, as indeed is the case with music, is built around a series of tension and release points. I like to think of release as stability because the word release implies you've had some tension before. But if you're starting with some stability, then that's the word I would use. So if you're playing a song and you don't know whether to play an E or an E7, have a look at the song and think to yourself, does this particular moment where the E chord is being asked of me tense or stable? In other words, am I quite happy to sit on this E chord as if it's the end of a piece of music, or are we going somewhere else? Are we going to another chord? Is there perhaps another chord that feels at home and more stable than the E chord? For example, we all know this sound. I was using an E7 chord there and an A chord. Now, I'll play it to you again, and this time I'm going to finish on the E7, and I want you to think to yourself, does this moment feel tense or stable? It's tense, right? Because what we want to hear is... Ah, there we go. We reached that A chord and now we're stable again. That is a very common thing in music where we have one chord that seems to lead into another. You get it loads. If you've ever finished a song in the key of C, you've probably done this ending. And again, if you were just to hold on the G7, it wouldn't feel finished. And yet the C chord does feel finished. So if you're in a situation where you know you're playing an E chord and there's another chord coming after that feels finished and finite, it doesn't have to be necessarily at the end of a song, but certainly at the end of a phrase, the end of a section, the end of a chorus or something. If you've got an E chord going to another chord, then it's likely that the E is being used as a tense chord, and therefore it's okay to play it as a seventh. But let's take the same example now and do it in the key of E so that our last chord is E. The E chord this time feels stable. If I was to play that as an E7, I'm playing this E7 here, but I could also use our more familiar E7. Doesn't have that same satisfying, conclusive resolution that when we were doing a normal E chord did. Ah, there we go. So, if your E chord, that moment of the E chord, is supposed to feel stable and at home and relaxed, then it's got to be a normal E chord. So there we go, we've understood now that a seventh chord is used as a unstable or tense sound, and it's only a normal chord, just a major chord, no sevenths or anything, that provide the resolution, the satisfaction, the stability. So if you've got an E chord and you think, can I get away with playing an E7? It depends if that E is supposed to be stable or relaxed. So bear that in mind. Now, there is one exception to everything I've just said. Do you want to improve your strumming, as well as learn a few fancy cool tips and tricks that will impress your audiences and friends? If so, then look no further than my brand new book, Go Faster. In the book, we go over 21 different strumming techniques. Some aimed at right for beginners who want to learn how to strum. If you maybe can strum but want to improve or sound a little better, then look at some of the intermediate lessons. Or if you're even an advanced player looking for a bit of a challenge, then there's some cool stuff in here as well, all to do with sort of Hawaiian rhythms, flamenco rhythms. Every single lesson is broken down with illustrations and photographs. There are video demos too to demonstrate exactly how everything should look and sound. So what are you waiting for? Earn your ukulele Go Faster stripes now with Go Faster. Now, there is one exception to everything I've just said. The blues. And this sort of crosses over into some jazz and some rock and roll and stuff as well. In that sometimes it is cool to end on an unstable sound. I'll give you a classic blues chord progression. It goes E7, then it goes to A7, then back to E7, B7, E7. And that time we actually want that crunchier, tense sound. Rock and roll and blues in general just lives off of that tense sound. It breathes seventh chords. So it all depends on the context. If you're playing something more bluesy, rock and rolly, then sometimes actually those seventh chords are going to work. But if you're playing something a little bit more clean, or just something that subscribes to a different musical philosophy that really wants the normal E chord at the end of a song or the end of a phrase, then it's really important to pay attention to that and adjust accordingly. So there we are. I hope you liked this video. Do let me know if it's helped you down in the comments below. It'd be lovely to hear from you. So while you're down there as well, give us a thumbs up and a subscribe, and then click on this video here right now so you can watch another one just like this. I'll see you over there.